You are listening to.
Oh, you shut the fuck up, Dan!
All right, episode 1, the inaugural episode of Shut the Fuck Up, Dad, the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You're here with that boy Nick. I'm here with Hamish
The other boy.
and sound technician Moke.
Woo!
How you guys feeling?
Again, I'm feeling very good and positive about what we're about to embark upon.
And what's that?
Listening to Chinese democracy and then discussing it.
Do you wanna for like the? Because obviously, like this is a very new podcast. Do you want to sort of explain like the mission statement? Like, what are we about?
It's a good point. So the mission statement, I believe, is we are going to assess on either a weekly or monthly basis, depending on time and resources
And interest, I suppose.
and interest, a different album that is in one way or another weird or unusual. No one wants to hear people talk about how good fucking In Rainbows is, so we're going to find the albums that are a bit more left field.
Well,
so to
having
speak.
said that, the albums, they might be good, they might be terrible.
Yeah, we
But,
might
you know.
even do In Rainbows, quite frankly. I don't know why I said that, but the point is, we might as well discuss albums that are.
Well, yeah, and I think this is a pretty good one to start on.
There's no better way to start. with
So,
it.
yeah, me and Hamish have been talking about doing this podcast for a while, and we kind of landed on the agreement that the only way to start it was by talking about the 2008 album by none other than Guns N' Roses, Chinese Democracy.
I think we should lay out first general opinions on Guns N' Roses that we have. Just to be clear,
Fair.
I wouldn't consider myself a huge Guns N' Roses fan.
I'm not a huge fan of Guns N' Roses, and the thing is, if you are a huge fan of Guns N' Roses, you're probably a fucking moron.
You are probably a dickhead, yeah.
But you know, having said that, they
They've
do
got
have
some-
some. They
they've
have
got
some
some
slaps. They have some
Great
slaps.
tunes. I don't think anyone can deny that there's, Sweet Child of Mine. I don't like.
Nah, come on.
I don't like November Rain. I think it goes on for far too long and is weird. But there's a hell of a guitar.
I mean, the
solo
thing
in
is, I honestly, I do not rate Appetite for Destruction whatsoever. I think it's just.
I think Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 are
Yeah.
solid gold.
I think I personally think the Appetite for Destruction is just it's pointless cock rock.
There's
And
some
was-
great tracks on that album.
I'm not a fan, man.
There's
But
some great
use your
tracks, like
illusion.
Welcome to the
Use your illusion.
Paradise
might-
City is a good track.
I'm not a fan, but Use Your Illusion, I think, is where they showed their artistic streak.
And
a
I think
little
we
bit.
both agree that Axl Rose is probably one of the best vocalists of all time, perhaps. I mean, the
He's
man
yeah.
can sing the fucking
He's definitely
phone
the
book.
best vocalist in Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So we're coming in from an angle of intrepidation.
we're not completely unvetted. We know some of the fucking the greater discography.
And
I
we-
will say though, this album when it came out, it wasn't really one I paid attention to loads. I did listen to
I
it,
don't
but
think anyone was.
that's the
This
thing.
came out 2008.
Well, yeah,
Guns
I
N'
mean,
Roses have been dead for
get dead.
well, dead musically for
Yeah.
15, 16 years.
But I have.
We
to
are
say-
talking in topics though. We're going through various
Oh, yeah.
discussion
I mean,
points.
I mean, I guess to sort of like contextualize it, with this album particularly, there was always talk for like years and years that there was going to be a new Guns N' Roses album. You might remember if you were ever on LimeWire and you were kind of into that whole scene, you might have come across some of the earlier versions of songs that would later appear on the album. So
I was more of a bear share man.
well, for me, for instance, I had acquired, allegedly, not illegally, early versions of "There Was a Time" and "Madagascar," which are both songs on Chinese Democracy.
Do you think they were legit? Were those real demos, or is that just?
Well, they sounded really rough and just
Okay.
not fully realized. But
I wonder who leaked those. I think we can come out quite clearly off the bat and say it's not a great album.
It's not great.
I have no intention of
Oh yeah,
listening
yeah,
to
yeah,
it
yeah,
again.
yeah. I mean, I've listened to it twice, and that's because you didn't fucking listen to it when we agreed that we were going to
Let's
listen
keep
to
the
it.
personal stuff off.
Just to contextualize for everyone listening. Me and Hamish made a plan to listen to this album, and he didn't fucking listen to it. So we had to listen to it this morning. So I had to listen to it twice.
As
Technically.
if that matters.
Well, I said I wasn't gonna listen to it again, but you know what? It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
It gives us more to discuss.
Exactly. Yeah. It nuances my my opinion, if you will. But I guess yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like overall, I guess the album was kind of going for this Blade Runner 2049 impact. It ended up being more of a Godfather Part 3 kind of thing.
It ended up sounding like if Marilyn Manson produced a Guns N' Roses album.
I mean, in all fairness to this album, the thing is, because it took so long for them to fucking put it out, all the reviews had like been written basically.
But
Like
surprisingly,
when you consider the fact, like okay, like Guns N' Roses release. Let's look at the timeline. Guns N' Roses released their final studio album in 1991. The music scene changes dramatically over the course of the 90s. But
Didn't Spaghetti Instinct come out in 93 though?
Huh?
Spaghetti Instinct came out in 93.
I think it was 95, but that's not original studio material. That's covers.
Fair enough.
But basically, you have all of the music that happened in the 90s, and then you had like most of the 2000s. And the thing is, at that point, like I think indie had become like sort of the front runner.
Nirvana came and died in the time that this album.
But
was
it's
made.
safe to say in 2008 when this album came out, like the front runner in mainstream music, it was either hip hop or indie. And the thing is, I think as a result of that, because of the amount of time it took the album to come out, a lot of the reviews had already been written. Like the album, like there were.
You touch on a good point.
Yeah.
Like, Guns N' Roses are probably the last of the rock bands to come out. I mean, when you think of that, the kind of hair, I've got a handkerchief hanging out my back pocket, and I wear leather.
I mean, if you're talking
They've
about
gotta be
guys
one of
who, if you're talking about like bands where the guys were definitely pedophiles, then yes, I agree.
No, Velvet
But-
Revolver were after.
Oh yeah, those guys were also. Yeah, I mean, they were most of Guns N' Roses.
No, it
I
was
guess.
Guns. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do feel this album got a lot of unfair press because the thing is, like, 20 years of expectation. Like, people are gonna. The reviews were already written, and the thing is, like, you look at any of the reviews. We'll get to that later when we talk about the reviews. But when you actually go through the reviews, no one actually listened to the album. They were just like, "Fuck, oh, this has been banned. Puts out an album."
Band is loose as well. It's Axl Rose and session musicians, not to discredit Buckethead, who is a great guitarist, and everyone else on the album. But I mean, it's clearly his love child. Like the Axl Rose, no one said no to Axl Rose throughout the entire recording of this album, and it shows.
Well, I mean,
there's so much production on this album.
That leads me quite nicely into the sort of the next segment of the pod. I did quite a bit of a deep dive into the making of this album. You guys can probably see my notes here.
I mean,
there's it's
an album that took 10 years to make.
Yeah, so. No, this is definitely a release where the sort of the story around it is way more interesting than the actual music itself.
So, question for you then, since you've done so much research, and I've glanced at Wikipedia a couple of times. When they started recording for Chinese Democracy, was the band still together? Did it begin its inception when everything was all rosy?
Well, I couldn't find an account of when the recording for this album the sort of, I guess, the kind of the general consensus, speaking vaguely, is that the process of making this album started as soon as they finished the tour for Use Your Illusion, which would have been around 93. So that's kind of when, I think, chronologically, that's when people consider this album like starting as a process.
Because I would say, and again, we'll go into your research, it sounds very much like a Guns N' Roses album. I mean, you would never mistake this for another band. It's got industrial influences, but this it's quite clearly.
Oh, but
it's quite clearly a GNR.
Yeah, but we'll touch upon that later. But yeah, I'll just sort of I'll just go through some of my notes.
Hit me with some facts, and I will.
Okay, so I mean, it was the first studio album that they had put out since the studio being obviously original material, not counting covers or live albums. This was the first album of studio material since 1991's double release of Use Your Illusion 1 and 2.
Which released as separate albums but in the same year, right?
Yeah. I
Kind of
maybe
a
I could
weird
have
back-to-back.
maybe I could have done a bit more research into that, but I just felt like it was
I'm
a bit
pretty
of a
sure they're two separate albums, but they released almost one after the other within
Oh, yeah,
within
yeah,
a couple
yeah.
of months.
I mean, I consider it a double album, but yeah.
I mean, that's
guess,
the year I was
yeah.
born, so I'm kind of going off
Mm.
secondhand information.
No one cares.
Okay.
So the band entered the production of the album on somewhat of a high. While Appetite for Destruction was undoubtedly the band's commercial peak. I mean, that album's gone diamond a couple
It's one of
times.
the best-selling albums in
Yeah.
the USA.
But while that album was undoubtedly their commercial peak, many people, myself included, would maybe consider Use Your Illusion to be the artistic peak for the album.
Agreed.
So it's actually quite funny because have you ever listened to the final song on Use Your Illusion 2, My World?
Yes.
That song you can actually hear the seeds of this album in that song.
And while we're quickly on Use Your Illusion,
Yeah.
Use Your Illusion 2 is 10 times better than the first one. It's by far the better.
But I
of
just
the two.
remember listening to Use Your Illusion 2 for the first time, being like, oh yeah, that's nice. And then the final song was just like this industrial, like, he's like, you want to step into my world, and I was like, what
I
the
think it's
fuck
where-
am I listening to? And then this album came out, I was like, oh okay, he kind of knew where he was.
I think it's
Use
where,
Your
and this is where I think Guns N' Roses went in this album, and definitely went Use Your Illusion. It's rock opera. It's so insanely maximalist. The production is crazy.
That's not what rock opera means, but I get what
You
you're
know
saying.
what I'm trying to say, though. Like it's like a wall of sound. There's so much going on, and it's indulgent. I mean, there's tracks on
Oh,
Use
yeah,
Your
yeah.
Illusion that are 10 minutes long.
You do have to keep in mind though that there was almost like 2 decades in between the albums. So
Yep.
yeah,
But the thing about Chinese Democracy, I think, though, before we go
Yeah.
into this later, there's no tracks that are of the length of their previous stuff. There's no 12-minute tracks. There's no November Rain
nah, yeah, you're right.
style of track, which is.
But I
is
mean,
interesting.
but yeah, moving on. So obviously the band was on a bit of a high. They had been killing it so far. Things went south quite quickly during the Use Your Illusion tour, though, which obviously followed the release. One of the founding members, guitarist Izzy Stradlin, left the band.
Any reason why? On your research, not
I
feeling
think it was the thing is like Axl. A lot of his issues with his bandmates would either stem. It boiled down to 3 things essentially. Like either he had like a big falling out with them, like personally, they were just doing too many drugs. So for instance, during the Use Your Illusion tour, their drummer, whose name I forget, he was fired because he was on so much heroin he couldn't do the drums for Civil War. Like how Civil War has that crazy intro.
drums in it, yeah.
He couldn't do that live, so they fired him. And then the third reason is just like if you don't share the sort of artistic vision that Axl has.
It's very much a Smashing Pumpkins, Billy Corgan-esque thing. where
Yeah,
he's the front man, and
Yeah.
that was understandably a hell of an.
He's
ego
got
to
vision,
manage.
so go with it. That's
Yeah,
basically the
yeah.
vibe. But the band tried to maintain some level of momentum and normality by releasing the cover album, The Spaghetti Incident. Largely forgettable. I don't really.
There's some good tracks on it. There are good covers on it.
I don't know.
Yes,
man.
I mean
Yeah,
seriously
but-
though, it's amazing actually that Guns N' Roses released so few original albums. When you think about the size of the band.
But obviously it comes as no surprise to anyone who's listened to this album that this album is heavy. It's quite influenced by a lot of the industrial tinged rock that permeated the music scene. Well, basically starting from '93 till a bit onwards. So you had stuff like Trent Reznor and Marilyn Manson who were making their mark on the scene.
And there's a lot
But the thing is,
of
because-
session musicians from both of those bands on this.
Well,
album.
the thing is though, my point is that because in '93 you kind of have the beginning of this scene, you can sort of hear this in the album. Axl was kind of leaning artistically in that direction, which caused a bit of a rift in the
When
band.
did Pretty Hate Machine come out? 94.
'89,
Was it that?
Yeah.
Fuck me, man.
maybe even earlier, but yeah, no, like Axl was already in '93 leaning towards the industrial sound that would be very apparent on the new album. which of course, I mean, given the fact that most of the band, I mean, they're all blues influenced musicians, it wasn't going over particularly well. I mean, Axl was really the one sort of steering the ship. Eventually, the lead guitarist and mascot of sorts for the band, guitarist Slash, had enough, and he left the group after this sort of between 93 and 99, this just sort of artistic limbo.
I love how we're a page into your notes and they haven't started recording the album yet.
Yeah,
that
well,
says
there you go.
volumes about how long this took.
Well, I mean, they did start. They had actually started recording the album, which is why Geffen, the record label that Guns N' Roses were on,
David,
offered.
God bless him.
Yeah, they offered Axl Rose $1 million.
Yes, they did. I saw
They
this.
offered him $1 million
To finish,
bonus
was it by
to finish.
99 or
Yeah, to
something?
finish by 1999. Apparently, the only thing
He didn't
yeah.
quite make that. I don't
Well,
think.
well, apparently the only thing he had done by the end of 1999 was record the majority of his vocals, which
No.
I imagine had to be largely re-recorded anyway.
I read this fact, and the one thing that jumped out to me about this is Guns N' Roses. They're a massive band. I mean, they're huge.
Yeah.
$1 million to access not much. I think it's quite a paltry sum for a band.
No, but
Who were
that's
quite-
dude, but that's a bonus. That's on top of touring fees.
I
and-
would have assumed you know. It sounded like they weren't. It's also
So-
quite interesting that in this whole time they never stopped touring. I mean, Guns N' Roses
well, yeah.
toured
And we'll-
the
and-
who
and,
way until this album came out.
Oh no, no,
saw-
and I have a
s-
section. I have a section of notes dedicated.
Oh, okay.
to
Because
that,
I saw
yeah.
them tour Chinese Democracy, and the album was not out when I saw them.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
I
no,
mean, it
yeah.
wasn't even close.
Dude, they toured for a decade before the album was out. But,
And,
but we'll get to that. We'll get
onto
to that.
There's some anecdotes there, but
But yeah, just. I guess I tried to find an explanation for the title. I just assumed the inherent irony of the title was meant as sort of like, you know, a bit of a joke. But I looked up Axl's statement on it, and it doesn't really seem like he even knows.
Well, the album cover, which is that bike with Guns N' Roses spray painted in the background, that was taken in Kowloon, so the walled city in China, which I believe
Yeah.
was knocked down in the late 80s. It was one of the like crazy cities. If you Wikipedia that city, it is wild. Now, did that come before the album title, or was it as a result of? I don't know, but it's,
I mean, Axl is not a stranger to the political realm. He obviously has commented on, and there are references in the album. Like
he's quite outspoken.
he references the Falun Gong in the title track of the album, which is obviously this sort of like. I mean, admittedly, I haven't done loads of research into this, but I think it was like this sort of Zen movement in China in the 90s, which eventually amassed millions of followers. And obviously the Chinese Communist Party were like, nah, we can't have this.
There's a strong rumor that he was just waiting to release it when China did have democracy, and he couldn't be bothered to wait any longer.
I guess as well, it's I'm just gonna leave that to sit. I guess as well though, it's also a perfect summary of the band, isn't it?
Chinese democracy.
Well, because Axl is the man. Like it's a
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that's a very interesting.
it's a band, but
Yeah.
Axl is the man.
Actually,
Like,
yeah. When you look at it the other way, Chinese democracy is another word for dictatorship.
it's a
isn't
really
it?
good
Yeah.
name. It's a culminative.
The more I
name,
think
suppose.
about it, the more I'm
Yeah.
impressed with the album title.
Yeah.
It's definitely better than Appetite for Destruction
Well,
and Use Your Illusion and the Spaghetti Incident. Although, in fairness, Guns N' Roses, if you take their catalogue in terms of album titles, quite enigmatic. A kind of weird set there when you think about it. Fair play to them.
Moving on. Following the announcement of the title, they released their first original recording in 5 years, which is the song "Oh My God." Interestingly, the second GNR song to feature in a film starring Arnie. So obviously, So End of Days was the film that was featured in. Obviously,
Never
Guns N'
seen
Roses
it.
had been. It's not very good.
No.
But obviously, You Could Be Mine by Guns N' Roses featured in Terminator 2, which there is a Terminator themed music video for. I recommend anyone who hasn't seen it to watch it because it's fucking hilarious.
It's so good. In fact, that's my favorite Guns N' Roses track. I would say maybe Civil War, maybe it kind of pips it, but it's a great track.
But yeah, I mean, I remember listening to Oh My God, like sort of way before Chinese Democracy came out. Like I remember it was hovering around the sort of the P2P sphere
This
for a bit.
This illegal downloading.
Yeah, allegedly.
Okay.
I didn't care for it that much, and I was unsurprised to find out that when the song initially came out, it wasn't very well liked at all.
And to be clear, it's not on the album.
It isn't.
It isn't. No.
It isn't, but it did give a bit of a hint into the sort of artistic direction they were heading.
Was I supposed to listen to Oh My God in preparation for this?
No, I didn't even listen to it.
Good.
I don't even remember what it sounds like, and I've actually heard the song. So yeah, we can.
I give it a 3 out of 10.
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy with that.
Okay.
Yeah, following a couple more years of creative stasis, the band
Creative
embarked.
stasis.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I wrote that myself.
Did
you like
you?
that?
Yeah, I like that. Say it again.
Creative stasis.
Nice. What does it mean?
It means so stasis is it's the act of not moving.
Okay.
Yeah, static.
Static.
Yeah.
Like Static X, the band.
Exactly.
Okay.
Fantastic band.
I
But yeah, following a couple more years of creative stasis, the band embarked on its first tour in almost a decade. And you're in for a spicy bit of reading when the Chinese Democracy
tour.
Dude, the Chinese Democracy Tour has its own Wikipedia article.
They were. Is this the time for personal anecdotes?
Well, let me just go through some.
Oh wow!
This tour went on for the better part of a decade. It drew to a close in 2011 after 19 legs touring.
Yeah.
So just to
I bet they showed up for maybe half of those dates as well.
Well, I'll go into a bit of detail about that. So the first year of the tour went incredibly well. The band played 4 shows and cancelled or postponed over 20 others.
Oh wow!
So yeah, and all the postponed shows ended up being cancelled as well.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
The second year also went well. An additional 20 or so shows were cancelled. One day in Vancouver was cancelled on the night, right before the band were meant to go on, which caused the riot.
Yeah,
Canada of all places, to get Canadian people to riot, like you really.
All you have to do is win the Stanley Cup.
Okay, I'll just leave that there.
I have no idea about hockey.
Yeah, clearly. But yeah, after a bit of a hiatus, the band continued touring in 2006 and somehow managed to get through the year with only 7 cancellations.
Can I now come in as this is the period where I saw Guns N' Roses? 2008, I believe, was the year I saw them. They headlined Reading Festival on the Saturday or the Sunday. I honestly can't remember. They turned up 45 minutes late. Now, if you know anything about listening...
That's quite conservative for them, isn't it?
It was quite conservative. If you know about anything about gigs in the UK, there's probably everywhere in the world, there's a curfew, as in if you go past, I think it's about 11:30 at night.
They have to shut it off.
They have to shut it off. Obviously, Axl Rose either didn't know or didn't give a shit, probably both, about this. So they turned up. It was supposed to play, I think, from 10 to half 11. They showed up closer to 11, which gave them half an hour to headline the festival.
You're in the jungle, baby!
Yeah. He came on, he pretty quickly insulted the fans for no real reason. Buckethead was good. He played a good set. It was horrendous. I mean, like, it was unforgettable, but also entirely forgettable. It was awful. But was it worth it to say that I've seen Guns N' Roses? Absolutely. But I will say this. I've seen several Guns N' Roses tribute bands since. They've been head and shoulders better than the real band. It's not even close.
Like, half of them probably don't even know the word. They just do it phonetically.
I saw Guns N' Roses in Spain. A Spanish Guns N' Roses
Sweet
tribute
child,
band.
oh my.
He only knew the songs phonetically, and he was a much better Axl Rose was. On the night that I saw him, I want to be clear that I think Axl Rose is a fantastic vocalist, but he was not on his game during this the Chinese Democracy tour. Was not great for Guns N' Roses. It wouldn't have turned you into a fan if you were on the fence.
To be fair, like that tour probably also impacted the reviews. Before the album.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they were really, really bad. It was bold to hire them to headline a festival, considering that they'd cancelled the previous year's tour almost entirely.
You might be pleased to know that the band managed to get through the rest of the decade with relatively few cancellations.
Because they only booked
However, they did very steadily. They strengthened a reputation for not being particularly punctual at all.
I think that's part and parcel of Guns N' Roses.
I think it became like, oh, at least they're here, even though it's taking them fucking 2 hours to show up.
Yeah, and let's be honest, they only need to play 4 songs and fuck off, and no one cares. That's fine.
In 2009, the band performed their longest show ever at the Tokyo Dome, which was over 3 hours.
That's a long time.
Yeah, that's
any reason for that? They just decided we're gonna really make up for all of the cancelled shows and play this one for 3 hours.
I don't know. I have to do a bit of reading into this, but there's something about when a band goes to Japan.
Oh, if you're big in Japan,
I don't know. I don't know if it's the fans or just like they have a better energy about them, or if it's
I mean,
the thing is,
punctuality is key as well over there, so they must have probably only one there. They're probably supposed to play for 3 hours every gig. They just never actually turn up. That's interesting.
Which is quite funny because when we saw BJM, they played 3 hours, and it was like, that's what we normally do.
Oh, it's over in a second, yeah.
But during this time, the band were supposedly wrapping up the production of the album. A sentiment they originally delivered in 2002 and continued to deliver until the end of the decade. Eventually, Geffen had enough and withdrew funding of the album.
See, now when you say withdrew funding, I mean, they'd already spent millions of dollars. Yeah. Withdrew in what way? Like, we're no longer going to fund?
We're no longer sinking millions of dollars into this.
Either finish the album or fuck off. I mean, surely there was enough there to go on. How did he fund the rest of the album?
No one knows. That's a bit of a blind spot.
It was released on Geffen, I believe, right? It was still.
Good question. Fuck. I feel like I should have. We should had
know
this.
Wikipedia open for
well,
this.
Have a look.
Let
have
me
a look.
Google.
Oh shit!
Don't worry. I've got it on the go.
Shit. Where's my phone?
Okay. So it was Geffen and Black Frog, which don't know Black Frog. It might be a Axl Rose's label. I don't know.
Black Frog. I would have thought.
Maybe they finished it up.
But after loads of back and forth, the band was able to deliver their first glimpse into the album in late 2008, which was the track Shackler's Revenge. So I say late 2008. The album did come out in late 2000. I would say Shackler's Revenge maybe came out in September, and the full album came out in November. I could be wrong there.
Was the lead single not Chinese Democracy?
In my memory, the flagship single was Shackler's Revenge.
I'm not asking; it's a fact. It was Chinese Democracy was the lead single. It released.
Well, then why did you ask it like a? Why'd you ask it like a question?
I don't know. It's just kind of see where you go with it. Yeah, it was Chinese Democracy was their lead single.
Okay, great. You happy with yourself?
I am. I feel great.
After loads of back and forth, so they put out the first song. Things were looking quite good in terms of gearing up for the release. Everything was ready to go.
In 2002.
Of course,
in 2000. Oh, okay. We've moved on.
Come on, dude, keep up.
Sorry.
In classic Guns N' Roses fashion, the eventual release of the album was not without controversy. As very unsurprising.
How so?
Well, Dr. Pepper embarked on a.
You make it sound like he's like an MD.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Pepper embarked on they embarked on a very clumsy marketing campaign.
They collaborated with Dr. Pepper.
No, they didn't collaborate. But basically, what happened was So my understanding of the incident, I might have to review, but basically what happened was Dr. Pepper, they said, if Guns N' Roses release this album by this date that they've advertised in 2008,
Mhm.
then we will give a certain amount of people free Dr. Pepper. And Axl Rose was like, I'll hold you that,
What?
I'll hold you that, Dr. Pepper. Here, let me find it for you, Dr. Pepper, Guns N' Roses.
Of their own volition?
Yeah.
Surely not. Why? Just
So,
because this is before. Was this before companies decided to have social media woke presences, or is this just was this?
So here's the incident. Okay, so in March 2008, the year the album was released, a
Mhm.
couple months before, 8 months to be precise. Dr. Pepper issued a. So yeah, I'm quoting this from ultimateclassicrock.com.
I would trust them with my life.
I mean,
UltimateClassicRock.com does
the
not.
only
They're
peop-
not in the business of lies, ever.
I mean, dude, they have to deliver like the facts to their audience of fucking Warhammer fans and people who work in sword shops. But in March 2008, Dr. Pepper, quoting Ultimate Classic Rock, in March 2008, Dr. Pepper issued a public challenge to Axl Rose, stating that they would give a free can of soda to everyone in the country, except the members of Guns N' Roses.
So
If-
you're talking about 360 million cans of Dr. Pepper.
Just wait. If this was on the condition that the band's long-delayed album, this is obviously Ultimate Classic Rock's words,
Yeah.
their long-delayed album, Chinese Democracy, came out that year. When the album did in fact arrive later that fall, the company was unable to keep up with demand, resulting in a downed website, frustrated customers, and even the threat of a lawsuit.
Dude, imagine if Chinese Democracy sunk Dr. Pepper as a brand. Now there would be a story. There's the podcast right there.
Yeah.
So that just fizzled out then, and everyone forgot. Obviously, because I've got no knowledge of this.
I think Guns N' Roses filed a lawsuit against Dr. Pepper because, understandably, a lot of
I mean, they weren't
the
entitled to a Dr. Pepper anyway. They were the only people not entitled.
Let's be real. The intersection of people who listen to Guns N' Roses and people who like Dr. Pepper is probably quite a significant.
Well, I think everyone likes Dr. Pepper.
It's probably a vote. It's probably a U.S. presidential vote winning margin. But yeah, they were basically Guns N' Roses filed a lawsuit because I'm assuming a lot of angry fans were coming to them, and Guns N' Roses were like,
where's my Dr. Pepper, Axl, you prick?
I'm just gonna go through a list of the musicians that were involved.
As you say them, I'm going to ask what they did.
Dude,
to
there's
elaborate.
some spicy shit here. So
Okay, go.
Brian May of Queen was apparently involved. I assume he played guitar.
We got no idea how or why.
Tommy Stinson of the Replacements,
Makes sense,
bass
yeah.
player.
Josh Freese
of the Vandals and Devo.
And also Nine Inch Nails and A Perfect Circle and everything else.
So Chris Vienna and Robin Frink of Nine Inch Nails. Dave Navarro of Jane's Addiction.
I see this. What did he do?
I'm assuming he played guitar.
Okay.
Fun fact about Buckethead.
Now there's good. This could be a podcast in itself.
Yeah, so obviously, when you get two creative minds that are as eccentric as Axl Rose and Buckethead together in the same room, it's not gonna be without friction, right?
Having said that, though, Buckethead's not a front man. He's content to be Buckethead.
Oh no, but they're still both eccentric geniuses
who are quite. A man who wears a bucket on his head. I think eccentric is putting it.
Who are quite used to being the governing force in their their musical projects.
That's fair.
But Bucket obviously he obviously he butt heads a few times with Axl. Apparently a chicken coop was built in the studio to appease Buckethead following frustrations during the production process.
You're gonna have to elaborate on that. For what reason would that?
That was just his demand. You think that's weird? He ended up using the chicken coop to watch hardcore porn, which Axl Rose was just like,
you can get porn on Chicken Coop, like an app. What the fuck?
No.
You really used it as a chicken coop is a space for chickens.
Yes.
How do you watch hardcore porn on a space for chickens?
you bring a TV into the chicken
Oh, I
coop.
see. He came in. Okay, sorry.
I would imagine. I don't know.
Right. Okay. Is this classic rock?
Was that an actual question?
It was an actual question.
But yeah, obviously Axel was like, "What the fuck is this guy doing? Whose man's is this?" So yeah, and then Brian Mancha of Primus, Godflesh, and some other bands. I couldn't really find anything that interesting about him. I think the most interesting thing about him is that he was a member of Primus, to be honest. But yeah, that's kind of, I don't know. Did you have any research? That was sort of my deep dive into the album.
The research, I mean, that's a hell of a lot there to dive into.
Yeah.
My research would only ever be kind of things in and around Guns N' Roses generally as a band. I mean, there's so much mythos around Guns N' Roses just on the whole. They're like I said earlier, like they're the last of the classic rock bands. I think classicrock.com would agree with me when I say that.
You mean Ultimate Classic
Ultimate
Rock?
Classic Rock, sorry.
It's Ultimate Classic Rock, bro.
They're the last of these bands where you wear leather trousers, you've got long hair, you might even have a top hat ensemble kind of thing. I don't think there's
You're
been
incredibly sexist.
I don't think there's been a band since like it.
You possibly banged 14-year-olds.
And the funny thing is that when the Spaghetti Incident came out in '93 or whenever it was, I think that type of rock was waning massively. I mean, the Motley Crue had gone, Kiss were out of fashion. I think they were holding the torch for that kind of anthem stadium rock kind of thing. And then immediately, as they fell out of fashion, grunge came in. We went from grunge to indie. And to this day, I don't think there's been a kind of a resurgence of this kind of music. I mean, obviously we said Velvet Revolver came about.
You say that, but
and
do you
then moved
remember?
on.
Do you fucking remember Wolfmother? Fucking hell.
I remember Wolfmother, but I don't think you couldn't put them. They're not the same.
Nah, but they were like Led Zeppelin revival, which I think there is.
I mean, like the
overlap.
Darkness, you could say, would be kind of a similar kind of
Yeah.
ilk kind of thing, but the kind of long hair, kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know why long hair seems to be the prerequisite for being.
Yeah, just cut your fucking hair.
Cut your fucking hair. As Pavement said.
Jesus.
I don't think I have anything to add. More just, it's just an insane thing that this album came out in 2008. When, I mean, what were people listening to in 2008? Like the Arctic
they were
Monkeys,
listening to
Modern Rock.
Float On by Modest Mouse.
Jesus wept. Yeah.
The Carter. I was listening to the Carter a lot then, which is
Um,
probably why I didn't pay loads of attention to this when it came out.
I mean,
the Carter
it's-
3,
I
I
mean,
should say.
Hip hop was very much in the ascendance at this point.
Yeah.
Indie rock, probably, if you wanted to listen to something with guitar in it. So this album, I think, came out. There was a load of hype around this album, but by the time the album came out, I think no one gave a shit.
Yeah,
I
it was a
genuinely think
bit.
no one cared.
It was a bit anachronistic for its time.
You know, it wasn't even. There wasn't even like the element of Chinese Democracy's come out. That's crazy. It was just like okay, Axl Rose has released an album. It almost felt like it was an Axl Rose solo album because I don't think people really considered, probably to this day, although they're back together now, the original band, so to speak. I don't think people considered it a Guns N' Roses album. It's an Axl Rose album.
Yeah,
And I think that's a fair point, and I think it actually shows in the production and how the album sounds.
well. The whole album,
I
it's
suppose
built around him, isn't it?
it is. And one thing I would say is in my gloss over the research was I did read a fair amount about what the other band members said about the album, and they were all quite
They
positive.
liked it.
They
yeah.
did like it.
Slash was like, "Oh, it was great to hear Axel's voice." again.
Slash was keen on it, and I think they all kind of. I think there was an overriding kind of like a read between the lines thing of it's the Axl Rose show. You know,
Yeah.
this guy, and like I said earlier, this is an album where no one said no to him. The production on this album is
Bombastic.
it's obscene
Yeah.
in some ways. But like we said, it's not a bad album.
No, it's not bad at all.
What are we on to next? The rate your music score. Interesting.
Okay. So yeah. Ooh.
So where are we going now? We're rate your music. I think is the next.
Well, I mean, the idea was, we look at Rate Your Music, but any other notable critics.
So
So I think my favorite review of the song is Chris Gow. So in his review, he says Rose succeeds on his own totally irrelevant terms, which I think is nails the album.
It really does put that very well.
It's a bit harsh.
We might as
but-
well just end this now, actually, because
Yeah.
I think that's exactly bang on.
But yeah, I mean, the Rate Your Music rating is 2.44 out of 5 from 4,000 ratings, which I think is a bit harsh.
As Guns N' Roses fans, I think they're quite the vitriolic crowd, I would say.
Yeah, but the thing is, like,
So
you
let's
know,
hold
you
on.
know,
Let's go back to what Chris Gow said, and I think there's a point to be made here of I think Axl Rose made the album he wanted to make. I wholly believe that. I think he finished this album and went, "That is perfect for what I intended."
Yeah.
I think he closed this up and went, "Yeah, I wouldn't change anything on this."
It was a
And
success.
Fucking good job.
It was an
'cause
artistic
took him
success,
fucking
yeah.
years. Now, does that make it a good album? No, not necessarily.
No.
But is it? Am I surprised at how it sounded? Absolutely not at all. There's nothing in this album where it jumps out and you go,
Yeah.
"Well, that's weird," or even that experimental. The most experimental thing you could say about the album is that he samples some fucking weird shit
Mm.
all the time.
We'll get to that, but yeah, no, I think the Chris Gow review, like, I think that review is like that statement. Obviously, you know, that's just a snippet from his whole review, but I think that like really captures it.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
it's the best kind of hot take of the album
Yeah.
I think you could have. I think the Rate Your Music rating, like I said, 2.4 out of 10. I think if you're a massive Guns N' Roses fan, if you wear a bandana
Well,
and you wear leather jeans and you go bowling every day,
is that what they do?
I think that's what they do. And you smoke cigarettes, but then you give up, and you're trying to scrape money together to
You
pay
kidnap
to
children
to pay for your kids,
to
and-
pay for your kids.
and your kids hate you, and you try and take them out like on his birthday, and you try and take him to a theme park, but you can't afford the expensive theme park, and it just ends
And you
up
make
shit.
like, you know, those people who make like rock memes where it's like this if you hate Justin Bieber.
Yeah. Like music was better back in my day when people used to wear leather trousers.
Do you remember that like copy pasta that was going around? It was like it's like, you say Justin Bieber, I say Linkin Park.
I love that.
Oh my, so fucking funny,
fuck,
man.
yeah, and Green Day.
Remember
when punk was Green Day? The point I'm trying to make though is, I think you're die-hard Guns N' Roses fan who wakes up to the sound of Sweet Child of Mine,
Mm.
watches Terminator 2 in the morning, eats a steak, does 6 lines of cocaine, goes to work at the gas station, and then goes home to bed. He's not going to like Chinese democracy because it's not Appetite for Destruction
the thing
2.
is though, you say that, but
I'm
so-
so
so-
sorry to Guns N' Roses
so-
fans, by the way. Like, I like Guns N' Roses.
but their fans are idiots.
They
But
are.
sorry if any Guns N' Roses fans.
We
well,
don't want you
I doubt.
here. We
doubt.
don't want you here. Fuck
I mean,
off.
to be honest, if
It's
I'm being
quite
if I'm
frankly,
being
fuck
completely
off.
honest, we'll be lucky if 5 people listen to this. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll be lucky if we don't end up at
But but yeah. Sorry, that was a Guns N' Roses fan in the studio. But
Was
yeah,
that Axel's new single?
yes, burp. But the thing about the rate your music review is the reviews rather. So I'm not the kind of guy who you know, reads reviews and, you know, will sort of build my opinion based on that. What I normally do,
It's a dangerous thing to do.
what I'll do is, the reason I read reviews on Rate Your Music is because more often than not, the review is actually a very interesting character study of the person writing it. So,
Yeah.
so for me, I read the reviews because I'm just interested in these fucking specimens. Like, do you remember that fucking Spaceman 3 review I sent you? Like,
Oh wow!
from that guy who didn't even talk about the fucking album. He talked about, he's like, oh, my brother doesn't understand me. It's like, you know, it's just people like.
It became a diatribe.
I read user reviews just purely for the specimens.
I mean,
But the thing is, I was reading, and you know, in that fashion, I read some of the Rate Your Music reviews.
oh, it's
for
out
this
of
album.
5, not out of 10. Okay.
Yeah, but the thing is, I feel like everyone who left a review of this album, they weren't actual Guns N' Roses fans. I don't think they listened to the album.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second, though. It got a 2.44
Yeah.
out of 5. Let's be mathematically incorrect and round that up to 2.5, which is a 5 out of 10.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
It surprised my math.
My math's not
Let's
great
be.
either.
Is that unfair?
Well, I don't know, because you this morning when
It's
you
not-
finally
it's
listened
not-
to it,
it's
you
not-
said it was a 7 out of 10. So
And then I revised that and said that's too much. It's probably a 6.
so now it's a 5.
I would probably settle at if someone really argued their case and said it's a 5 out of 10. I'm not gonna.
You know what? I'm not disagreeing with that. What my point is, it's not so much the numerical rating; it's the fact that the reviews that I actually read,
Oh, they
not
have
a
nothing
single
to do with
person
the
seems
album.
to reference. It was just people.
Like Axl Rose is fat
yeah.
and he doesn't turn up on time.
It seemed like a lot of
2.4.
It seemed like a lot of eager people just wanting to shoot off their best Guns N' Roses jokes.
Yeah, got any? Did you make any?
No, because none of them were great. I was like, I'm not gonna waste my time. It was just like, oh, this album took ages to come out. It's like, well done, dude. Well done.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
But like I said, is a 5 out of 10 that unfair? Probably not.
No, probably not.
Probably not. In the grand scheme of music, is it a 5 out of 10? Probably is. Really.
Probably.
What's the best Guns N' Roses albums? Probably a 7 or an 8 out of 10. 7. But fine, the next category though is music videos.
I'm not gonna lie, I did not see a single music video.
I don't think there is one.
Fuck it, we'll skip this segment.
So move on. Let's give it 2 seconds to discuss how great the "You Could Be My" music video is.
But that's not on this album.
I know, but it's still good. It's still a good music video. And that's the discussion. Move on.
All right. So I mean, one of the big questions is, and I guess this is a particularly spicy question when you're talking about the lore of Guns N' Roses, which is what has aged the best.
I mean, all of it's aged.
It's certainly aged.
Yeah.
I mean, I
it's
guess
like a fucking time capsule.
The thing is, I think
even in 2008, this album was out of date.
But we'll talk about that in the next category. But right now, what's aged the best?
Ah, shit. That's a very tough question.
I guess the vague theme of Chinese democracy. I think maybe fucking.
Then
again, they'd been like that since the 50s. So.
I think Axl's voice. Axl's voice is to this day one of the best rock voices. One of the best voices. His range is amazing.
Well, I do think it's a very forgettable. Well, not very forgettable.
I think he saves the album, but his vocals on the album are by far the best thing on the album. I mean, that's good. It's quite clear that he kills it vocally on the album. You can't fault his vocals.
I mean, while it is in a grand sense, while it is quite a forgettable album, you have to applaud the vision and the ambition that he had.
Yeah, he.
Like listening to this album, just like I'm not a fan of this kind of music, but like what he does on this album is fantastic.
He didn't leave anything out.
No,
he should have done, but he didn't.
It's a forgettable album, but I have to applaud the effort and the ambition that he.
And you know what? He took it on his own. He continued touring, like we said.
Well, I guess the easier question is.
Although having said that, he could have worked on this album for 4 minutes a day for 10 years, and it took a while. What I want to know is when did he actually finish the album? It's what's aged the best. Yeah, I think for me it's his vocals though. It's got to be.
I guess it's easier.
And the album cover looks pretty good.
I guess it's easier to answer the question: what's aged the worst about this album?
No,
other than Axl Rose himself, because let's be real, he looks like shit.
He doesn't look good. No,
he looks like if fucking. He looks like Don Johnson with a sunburn.
He looks like my grandmother.
Damn.
Yeah, it's a shame. I just want to, just if Axl ever does listen to this, you're a cool guy, man. Like, everyone ages.
You're a great guy.
You're a great guy, and I like you. I think your politics are okay, fine.
It's just like what was up with that period where you looked like the Cowardly Lion from Wizard of Oz for a minute?
And why are you always late? I think that would be what. Like, there's no reason to just turn up on time and play like the 6 tracks I want to hear you play. Is it that, or maybe that's why you turn up late because he doesn't really need to get through many. Anyway, What has aged the
Another
worst?
thing I think.
You put Axl Rose aged
Yeah,
the
well,
worst.
yeah, I just.
He aged the best
That's
and the
literally
worst.
what we just spoke about.
Yeah, no, I know, but like in terms of visually, he's not aged.
I mean, in terms of the actual album, I think it sounds a bit too clean and overproduced.
mm-hmm.
It almost sounds like synthetic at times.
I wouldn't call it clean. I'd call it busy.
No, but clean is a reference to like the. It doesn't sound muddy. It sounds very much like
Yeah.
like
Yeah, it's
sounds like
drum machine. It sounds like everyone recorded it in their own booth.
It sounds like a
and then they mixed
U2
it.
album almost. Like it's just like everything is
It's a very
properly
good
sort
point.
of
Yeah, it does. It does.
It's not like a garage rock,
No.
garage rock.
At no point did you get the impression that the whole band played this album together.
Mm.
I really don't think they did.
I also think that the industrial cock rock sound that he kind of used heavily on this, I think by the time this album came out, that style was way out of vogue.
Oh yeah, yeah. But that's one of the funniest things about this album is that Guns N' Roses were out of vogue, and even the thing that he was trying to emulate, the industrial Marilyn Manson sound, was also out of date.
Well, it sounded like the worst Nine Inch Nails. It sounded like the less captivating part of the Nine Inch Nails catalog.
I think the worst Nine Inch Nails album is still better than this album.
Yeah, I guess. And the thing is, it's quite hard to it's very hard to conceive that this album will ever get better with time. I think that sound overall will not get better.
It's a time capsule. Yeah. And the funny thing is, it's barely even a time capsule of 2008. It's like you dug it up in 2008 from what 1998, 97 maybe. It's a very strange album. I think the whole album hasn't aged great.
No,
but I think it does bear to say that it's still a 5 out of 10. Like it's. You've gone
down 2 ratings since this morning.
I've dropped it from a 7 to a 5. Because the 7's ridiculous, there's some great albums.
Yeah, I thought when you said this is a 7 out of 10, I was like, wow.
I was excited. It was early in the morning.
I was like, damn, Hamish is an idiot.
6 is generous. 5 is probably accurate. And it's aged.
But yeah, I guess well, like you said, it hasn't aged amazingly well. Which I guess begs the very. This is a question I really did not want to go into. How do we fix Chinese democracy?
You bring
the album, not the thing.
Okay, sorry. You bring all the original band members back. You get them in a room. You take them probably off drugs, and you get them to write 10 to 12 new songs, and then release that.
I agree. That was I literally in my notes I was like the band.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's like I said earlier. It's an Axl Rose album. This isn't a Guns N' Roses album. It's an Axl Rose album.
The thing that
Axl Rose thinks that when he doesn't know what to do with a song, you put in a 6-minute guitar solo, and then just whack everything up to 11. And Axl Rose also thinks the only way you can do a track is to sing with no guitar, and then at about 45 seconds, bring in guitar. And it's dumb, because there's so many better Guns N' Roses tracks out there. Like I said, it's not a bad album, but if you wanted to fix it, you need to make it a Guns N' Roses album, which this is not. It's an Axl Rose album. And it might be a great Axl Rose album, but it's not a great Guns N' Roses album.
I mean, the only thing that I would fix... I mean, I say the only thing I would fix is actually quite a big thing. The album really... For this album to have been a success, he just needed to put it out earlier. It just became a victim of its own hype.
Yeah.
And the thing is, can you imagine if he put out this album in, like, 95? With this sort of, with these songs in mind, it would have been a fucking banger. And they would have like a fucking, if he wasn't such a perfectionist, they would have like a fucking 10 album discography, and they would all, they would be all quite successful albums. But it just became a victim of its own hype.
And
didn't it?
that wouldn't be very Guns N' Roses, in fairness.
That's true,
The
yeah.
dysfunction of the band is part of the fun of the band. But
Yeah,
it's
good point.
it's not, it's not a Guns N' Roses album. You can't really fix the album
No.
without changing the entire album.
Yeah.
Fixing it's like a moot point at this stage, because it
It's
is what it is. And like we said, Axl Rose is probably incredibly happy with this album. This is exactly what he wanted to make. Fine.
Yeah,
Fine.
as a wise man once said, he succeeded on his own totally irrelevant terms.
That it really is. That's
It is.
really well put. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know why we're still talking about it. Quite honestly, that you could just read that and then we could just leave. But that's true. So we're coming on to the funny topics now. Well,
I don't really have.
I have nothing for this. So
Let's move on.
No, I think we should discuss that there is a category for funniest credit on the album.
Yeah.
There's no funny credit. Axl Rose produced the
mean-
whole album and then just used people that you would expect. Let's move on.
I think we should pay a bit of attention to. We should lend a bit of attention to Buckethead, because why?
What does he do now? Did you do any research? or anything?
Dude, he's probably on a sex offender register.
We can't put that in there.
What?
You can't say it's a sex offender. You get done for libel.
Really?
Yeah.
Nah, he wasn't. I was just joking.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, probably.
All right, cool.
He's a good guitarist.
Buckethead has never diddled kids.
Never ever.
He's
He
a
didn't
weird.
even intend
He's
to.
a weird guy, but I doubt he's ever diddled kids.
Hold on, let me check his Wikipedia see if he has.
Okay. All right. Well.
No, he's good. He's good.
Yeah, you're
He's
clean.
a
Don't worry.
Clean man.
We've done the ocular pat down, and he is clean.
You know, he did several albums with Viggo Mortensen.
Damn.
Yeah.
My friends, you bow to no one. Worst song on the album. I've got a few notes on this.
Can I go first?
Yeah.
I've got a clear favorite for me. Sorry. I think Sorry is awful.
Yeah.
It's like it reminded me of, when YouTube stars have to apologize for being racist, sexist, or misguiding the youth, and they go on with no makeup and apologize. That was like this version for Axl Rose. It's just a terribly kind of misguided, kind of faux sentimental bullshit track that I hate.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like there are a few contenders, like Riyadh and the Bedouins. Like the title alone.
Oh, I didn't mind that. Madagascar's trash.
I mean, the vocalizations on Riyadh and the Bedouins, I laughed out loud. Like, I just couldn't take the song seriously at all. I can't stand Madagascar. The sample collage just fucking ruins the song.
If you're gonna sample
It's also
Martin
very
Luther King,
It's if you're gonna sample Martin Luther King, don't say the N-word in one of your other songs.
that should be words to live by.
Yeah, I just thought it was a very interesting choice. It's like he's forgotten about lies, but the thing is, Axl is clearly a guy who takes his art seriously, so there's no way he's forgotten about it. Which is weird for a guy who's like, I guess quite. I mean, you see his political, like sort of political statements nowadays, and he seems quite, woke. But he literally said in a song, "I hate gays, I hate blacks, I hate immigrants," which is just like.
I hope he's going for irony, but yeah, I mean, honestly,
if he
you look
was
on
going
his
for
Twitter,
irony, it was.
He seems quite left, but yeah,
But
maybe he wrote that song in 1995 and then just didn't revise it. Who knows? But not that that's an excuse. But
I mean, yeah,
fuck.
yeah, Madagascar, Riyadh of the Bedouins.
I mean,
While
I'm
I
looking at your
can-
notes now. You've
Yeah.
got worst song and you've listed half the track list.
Yeah.
Which is quite says something.
While I can perfectly picture This I Love on either of the Use Your Illusion albums, I think it just comes off as really melodramatic with
But the
modern
whole
production.
album is melodramatic with modern production. I mean, like, seriously,
Which is why this, in my opinion, is a particular failure.
yeah. I think you've got to take the
Sorry,
you've got to take
Sorry also falls in this category.
You've got to take the album with a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
I think it's if you take it too seriously, every single track.
Well, dude, if you take this album seriously, please come home from the army. Your parents miss you. But Street of Dreams sounds like a shit version of something that could have been on Use Your Illusion.
These guys
If-
aren't in the army. They
Yeah.
go paintballing with the full gear.
There are
Pretend
a
they're
lot
not.
of songs on this album which just sound like collaborations between Axl Rose and Moby. I'm just like, what the fuck
That's
is going
true.
on?
Yeah. He really did dabble in the synthesizer world for a
Mm.
little bit, and that's where the industrial kind of thing
Well, yeah.
comes in. And again, it's where someone should have just said no.
But,
And also, the funny thing, there's so much of the tracks in this album are like compartmentalized in the sense of like, okay, you've got like, okay, here's the first 40 seconds with Axl's vocals, and now we're gonna add this sample of Martin Luther King, and then some violins, and now we're gonna do a guitar solo, and it's just like, it's like, it's like going through like a theme park. You're like, this is the guitar bit. This is the Axl Rose screaming bit.
this is
is
the bit where
quiet
Axl
bit.
harmonizes with himself.
Yeah, this is the bit where he records himself 6 times and layers it over himself. Like it's a mess. The production is a mess.
I mean, my final sort of my final thought on this is I also think There Was a Time is comically bad at times.
Yeah,
The hook is it was a long time for you, it was a long time for me.
yeah.
It's just like what I'm like, what the fuck am I listening to?
Yeah. He still sings well on it, but yeah.
But I just found it comically bad at times. It wasn't a
I tried not.
altogether-
I tried not to assess the lyrics. Quite
Yeah.
frankly, it just wasn't worth my time. Like I would probably drop it down to a 3 if I actually listened to the lyrics.
Your estimation of this album has gone down significantly.
As I discuss it, I start to think about other albums that aren't as bad, and it does.
Most
I don't think it's an awful album. It's not good.
It's not good.
It's not good. I'm never going to listen to it again,
Same.
and that's good. That's the best. The best part of this album is when it finished.
If I have to go with the this can we also just say that this album went on for 71 minutes.
Oh my god. Yeah. In fact, if you're going to fix the album, cut half the tracks out.
Yeah, there's no reason for an album to be longer than 45 minutes or shorter than 45 minutes.
Shorter than 45 minutes. You got an EP there, son.
No, EPs are 15 minutes. Do your research. But
Stunned silence.
Best song.
Okay.
I think you know my opinion on this.
I have 2. I like
The title track is
the title
sick.
track, Chinese Democracy. It kicks off well.
Yeah.
It's downhill from there, but it kicks off well. And here, controversial choice. I think
IRS.
I think IRS
It
is a
pretty
good track. I think it's there's some good shit on that. It's a classic Guns N' Roses.
That
track.
song is like fucking Trump listened to. He's like, oh no, I have to skip.
Yeah, the fact that he's done a song on IRS is it's just
Calling
cracking me up.
IRS.
But I think at a push, Chinese Democracy. He knew what he was doing when he put that song as the first track, because he also thought that plenty of my fans will just turn it off after this, and might as well give them the good stuff straight away. And when he performs it live, he'll be so late to the stage, that's the only song he has time to play. So he might as well put it on first. What's yours?
I have to mention Catcher in the Rye, because I think while it starts off like a bit saccharine, I was quick to dismiss it. But as I listened to it, I had to rewind it, because as it built, I found it quite captivating by the end.
Having said that, though, it's one of those where it's like you don't want to analyze the lyrics.
No.
You know.
No, for me it was just like, it's just very well put
Sonically.
together. Like, I thought that song, if that was on Use Your Illusion, you're fucking cooking with gas, my guy.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess IRS title track. Yeah, so 3 as opposed to the songs I put in worst song category, which I
If you were gonna go and listen to this album, listen to those 3 tracks, and you probably might come away and go, yeah, fine. Axl Rose made an album in 2008, and these are 3 tracks from it.
these are songs.
And these are songs, yeah, and I'm not offended.
And that sweet music.
That's music. Is this music?
Is this music?
That's a good question. Is it? Maybe.
I think we sort of have to ponder as well. How does this album rank in the artist's overall career?
Now, we're going
or
to have different
discography?
opinions here, because you really don't like Appetite for Destruction, and I think that Appetite for Destruction, just on the singles alone, makes that a good album. I mean, Jesus Christ, like all of their hits are on that album.
What if you don't like the singles?
Well, then you're not. Then why are you listening to fucking Guns N' Roses albums? Then you did. We've just spoke about it for an hour.
Yeah, because for this.
Okay, where'd you put it then?
I'm not fucking. You know, I'm not.
Where'd you
I'm not
put
walking to work. It's like, oh, I better listen to some Guns N' Roses.
In my opinion, is it better than Appetite for Destruction? No. Is it better
No.
than Use Your Illusion 1 and 2?
No.
Is it better than Spaghetti Incident? Honestly, no, because those songs were written by other people who were way more competent. No. Is it their worst album? Probably. Is it a bad album? Not really.
Not wholly.
Not wholly, but it's definitely their worst album.
I do feel if some version or iteration of this album had come out in the 90s,
yeah, if
it
they
would have
re-recorded
been-
it
yeah.
with the original band.
it would have been
It would have been
fucking
fine.
their magnum opus.
Mhm.
But you know, here we are.
It's their worst album.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but when your discography is 3 albums, so yeah, fair enough.
yeah, one of them's an album of covers.
Well, no, I mean studio albums though.
Okay, do you not count that at all then? The Spaghetti Incident.
Dude, I'm saying studio albums.
I
I'm
recorded
talking
it
about...
in the studio.
No, studio albums means fucking album that you recorded with original material.
I thought it just meant you recorded it in the studio.
Hey, dude, you fucking record We're in a studio right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, shit.
But I think we're in a. It's the worst album.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
Oh
not,
yeah, yeah.
You know
Yeah.
where it ranks, where the others rank is up for debate, but it's their worst album.
Yeah. I mean,
It's definitely the worst Axl Rose album, but also the best Axl Rose album, because I don't think you can consider it a Guns N' Roses album. It is bold. Actually, there's a fact that I don't think we touched on in the facts and thing. Did not Axl Rose sue the rest of the band for the name Guns N' Roses?
Did not Axl Rose? Is that your question?
Did he? I thought he sued the rest of the band so he could use Guns N' Roses. Is that not true?
That does ring a bell.
I think he did. Which
Let's fact check the.
hold
the,
on
let's
to
fact,
the
fact check the
Google.
thing.
Did Axl Rose sue Guns N' Roses? I'm not very good at Googling. I spelled his name wrong.
Google. Fuck, lots of dead air, man.
Hold on.
Axl Rose.
Turns out, I have no idea. Let's assume he did.
Let's just say, you know what?
Let's just say yes.
Verified true fact.
Verified true fact. He sued the rest of the band so he could use the name, or at least he went into legal conversation so that he could be the sole owner of Guns N' Roses, which makes sense.
He spoke to a guy that was a lawyer in a club in LA.
Yeah, and he mentioned in passing, I would like to use Guns N' Roses exclusively for my future projects.
For my future drink.
And he said, go ahead.
My future energy drink.
So, is it the best Guns N' Roses album? It's
No.
not a Guns N' Roses album. Is it the best Axl Rose album? Yes. Is it the worst
Well-
Axl Rose album? Yes.
The thing is, though, Guns N' Roses is Axl. That's the thing.
No.
No, it is.
No, here's a
It
band
is.
with Slash in it. You cannot say that. Slash is an equal part Guns N' Roses. In fact, even Duff and Izzy. I mean, Guns N' Roses, of all of the rock bands, it's an ensemble piece. They were such characters.
It's Axl Rose. Man.
Slash, at least, would account for, I would stretch to 33% of that band. For sure, man. He's the most iconic guitarist of a generation.
I mean, he's their mascot, but Axl Rose is he's the creative force.
Would the album have been better with Slash on it? Yes. There you go. Then it's...
Dude, fucking all these guys like wanking on their guitars sound it sounds the fucking same. It doesn't matter.
I disagree. I but fine.
But I guess that leads us to the closing statements and the final verdict on the album.
What is there left to say, really?
I mean, it's nowhere near as bad as I remember it being, and at some points, I have to admit, I was kind of pleasantly surprised. It's strangely cohesive for an album that took fucking ages to put out.
Yeah.
That was in development hell, and at the same time, while I didn't hate re-listening to it, I will probably never listen to it again.
If there was a parting thing to say, is go listen to the album because it's an interesting time capsule of an album released in 2008 that sounds like it was recorded in 1998, but also from a guy who just sort of like listened to Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson like 3 weeks before the album came out. It's weird as fuck.
It is, yeah.
It's weird as fuck, but it's.
But
not
you know,
bad.
that's what this podcast that only started today. That's what this is about. We're about talking about fucking weird albums like this.
So what are we listening to next then?
Well, I don't know. Should we do the raffle now,
Let's
or
do the
should we
roulette.
maintain a little bit of mystery? Fuck it. We can decide later. We can edit this.
We can edit this
All right.
in.
Let's see. All right.
I think you should put it into the wheel and see what we come up with.
What's the wheel? I forget.
Just put in like fuck no, I saved it on bookmarks. Hold on. Get the Google Doc up and I'll remember what the wheel is.
The wheel.
It's called wheeldecide.com. And you can just copy paste the list in and it should do it fine.
Wheel decide. Okay, cool. Let's have a look.
It's really good.
I can cut that out if you want. We'll decide.
Just cut everything I've said out, quite frankly.
All right, so let's have a look.
And if you scroll down,
It's
no,
what
go down
it's,
more, and
dude.
put paste list. Don't
right.
yeah.
It's line breaks, I suppose.
Yeah, add and then just add choices.
Okay, so
And then scroll down, and then you just keep scrolling. I think up, and then apply wheel changes. Okay, so are you still recording?
yeah.
Right. So the next album on the virtual spin the wheel is. You just got to click it, bro. Oh, okay. Oh, this is tense.
The next album is. Oh!
Absolutely yes.
The next album is Red Hot Chili Peppers. I think
If
that's
it's
the name.
papers, yeah.
Or Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Charlie, there's Charlie.
Stadium Arcadium.
The double album of Solid fucking Gold. God, that album's trash. Jesus Christ, I'm gonna have to listen to Danny California again. Oh wow. I can't wait to do this one, dude. That album's like 3 hours long. Fuck.
Oh, you did this to us.
Okay, well, see you next week then.
See you next week.
You are listening to
Oh, you shut the fuck up, Dan!